Doctors said it was over, but the nanny revealed a secret that made the millionaire cry. When everyone had already given up on the sick child, a silent woman decided to act in the shadows. Without legal permission and driven only by affection, she broke medical rules in an attempt to save the child. What she revealed afterwards made a father fall to his knees in tears and made the world rethink what family truly means. Life has a way of taking turns no one expects, the kind that transforms everything in the blink of an eye, dividing our existence into a before and an after. For Andrew Foster, that line had already been crossed 3 years ago, when he lost Helen, his wife, his partner in dreams, the woman who brought light to his most difficult days. She departed silently, leaving an absence that could not be filled with words of comfort or the passage of time. She also left Olivia, a little girl with enormous brown eyes and a mischievous smile, who was only 3 years old at the time, and who became the sole reason Andrew could get out of bed every morning. Chicago kept spinning outside, with its chaotic traffic, its noisy streets, and its buildings that touched the sky. The city didn't stop for anyone. But inside the apartment in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, time seemed to have a different rhythm. Andrew worked from home as an architect, a choice he made after losing Helen. He couldn't imagine leaving Olivia with babysitters or in daycare. She was all he had left. She was his heart beating outside his chest. In the first years after the loss, Andrew and Olivia built their own routine. He learned to make crooked braids, to cook pasta just the way she liked it, to invent bedtime stories. She learned not to ask so much about her mother, to understand her father's silence at times, to be stronger than any child should have to be. But they were happy as much as possible. They had each other. It was in the autumn of 2023 that everything began to change. Olivia, who had always been an active child, full of energy, started complaining of fatigue. At first, Andrew didn't pay much attention. He thought it was a kid thing, a growth spurt, maybe a flu that wouldn't go away. But the fatigue persisted. Then came the abdominal pains, the lack of appetite, the paleness that took over that once rosy little face. Andrew took Olivia to the pediatrician, who ordered routine tests. The results took a week to come back, a week that felt like a whole month. When they returned to the office, the doctor, Dr. Beatrice, looked at Andrew with that expression he already knew, the same one he had seen on the faces of the doctors when Helen got sick. It was the expression of someone who has to deliver news that no one wants to hear. The diagnosis was devastating. A rare, aggressive disease that was attacking Olivia's liver. A type of fulminant autoimmune hepatitis, with characteristics that doctors rarely saw in children so young. Dr. Beatrice explained everything calmly, with the delicacy of someone who knows the weight of every word. She talked about treatments, medications, possibilities. But Andrew was no fool. He could see in her eyes that the chances were slim, very slim. His world collapsed again. How could he be going through this again? How could God, the universe, fate, whatever it was, be so cruel? He had already lost Helen. He couldn't lose Olivia. He wouldn't be able to bear it. He simply wouldn't. The treatments began. Back and forth trips to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Strong medications that left Olivia nauseous and weak. Constant tests. Consultations with specialists. Andrew dropped everything. His architecture projects took a back seat. His life was now reduced to caring for his daughter, trying to keep her comfortable, praying every night for a miracle to happen. But the months passed, and Olivia didn't get better. On the contrary, the disease was advancing. The doctors tried new protocols, new combinations of drugs, but nothing seemed to work. Andrew watched his little girl slowly wither away. She, who loved to play at the park, now barely had the strength to get out of bed. She, who used to sing children's songs around the house, now spent her days in silence, looking out the window. It was around this time, when Andrew was at rock bottom, not knowing what to do anymore, that Marina entered their lives. He had placed an ad looking for someone to help with the housework. He could no longer manage everything on his own. Between caring for Olivia, the hospital trips, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, the house was a mess. He needed help. Marina Scott was 42 years old, originally from Madison, Wisconsin, had dark hair always tied in a simple bun, and a smile that was calming. She wasn't a person of many words, but she had that serene way about her that conveyed trust. When Andrew interviewed her, something about her made him feel he could trust her. Maybe it was her sincere gaze, maybe it was the way she asked about Olivia, showing genuine interest. Maybe it was just his desperation wanting to believe that someone could help. Marina was initially hired to cook, clean, and organize the house. Simple things, but from the very first day, she did much more than that. While Andrew was on the phone with doctors or working on an urgent project, Marina would stay with Olivia. She talked to her, read her stories, put on cartoons, and most importantly, she didn't treat Olivia like a sick child. She treated her like a normal child who deserved to laugh, play, and dream. As the weeks went by, something special began to happen. Olivia, who had become increasingly quiet and withdrawn, started to open up to Marina. She would ask for her to stay close. She wanted to show her drawings, her toys, her favorite books. She started to smile again, even on the difficult days, and Marina reciprocated all that affection with a dedication that went far beyond professional. It was something genuine, deep, maternal. Andrew observed all of this with a mixture of gratitude and melancholy. It was wonderful to see Olivia happy, but at the same time, he couldn't help but think of Helen. Would she be happy to know that another woman was occupying that place of care and affection in their daughter's life? Was he being disloyal to his wife's memory? These thoughts tormented him on the nights he couldn't sleep, but the truth was that Marina was there, present, real, caring for Olivia with all the love in the world, and that's what mattered. The following months were an emotional roller coaster. There were days when Olivia seemed to improve a little, gained some weight, played more. On those days, Andrew allowed himself to have hope, but then came the bad days, when the disease showed its strength. Olivia would vomit, have a fever, become so weak she could barely lift her head from the pillow. In those moments, Andrew would retreat into his own despair, and it was Marina who held things together. She would stay by Olivia's side, applying cool compresses, giving her medicine, softly singing songs that calmed the little girl. One August afternoon, Andrew was in his office, trying to focus on a delayed project. He heard laughter coming from Olivia's room, genuine, unrestrained, childish laughter. It had been so long since he had heard that sound. Curious, he went to her room and saw Marina and Olivia playing with modeling clay. They were making little animals, laughing at the strange shapes they created. Olivia had that sparkle in her eyes that Andrew thought had been lost forever. In that moment, something broke inside him. All the barriers he had built, all the fear of getting attached to someone again, all the apprehension about betraying Helen's memory. It all came crashing down. He realized that Marina wasn't there by chance. She was saving not only Olivia, but him as well. She was bringing life back into a house that had become a makeshift hospital. That night, after putting Olivia to bed, Andrew asked Marina to talk. They sat in the kitchen, each with a cup of tea. Andrew didn't quite know how to begin. Marina waited in silence, with her characteristic patience. Andrew finally said he wanted to thank her, that she was doing much more than she was supposed to, that Olivia was lucky to have her around, that he was lucky. Marina just smiled and said she was doing what she felt she needed to do, that Olivia was special. That caring for her wasn't a job, it was a privilege. It was in this conversation that Andrew learned a little more about Marina's past. She told him she had a younger sister, Eleanor, who passed away when she was only 17. It was a sudden, aggressive illness, similar to Olivia's. At the time, Marina's family didn't have the resources to pay for the expensive treatments that might have made a difference. They depended on the public system, which was overwhelmed. By the time they finally got a hospital bed, it was too late. Marina told him all of this with a voice that was thick with emotion but firm. She said that since that day, she had made a promise to herself. If she ever had the chance to help someone, to prevent another family from going through the pain hers had, she would do anything. Anything. Andrew sat in silence, processing it all. He understood then why Marina was so dedicated. It wasn't just a job, it was a personal mission, a way to give meaning to the loss she carried. The two of them sat there for hours, talking about loss, about pain, about how unfair life can be, but also about hope, about love, about how there was still beauty in the world, even amidst the chaos. That conversation changed something between them. It created a connection that went beyond the professional. They became allies, partners in a battle no one chooses to fight. September arrived, bringing with it the spring, but also difficult news. The doctors called Andrew for a meeting. Dr. Beatrice was there, along with two other specialists. Everyone's expression was grim. Andrew felt his stomach churn before a single word was spoken. The doctors explained that the treatments were not having the desired effect. Olivia's disease was progressing faster than they had imagined. They spoke in numbers, in statistics, in possibilities. But what Andrew really heard was a sentence, a few months, maybe 6, if they were lucky, maybe less. How could he process that? How could he go home and look at Olivia knowing her time was running out? How could he keep breathing, living, existing, with that information burning inside his chest? Andrew left that hospital like a walking dead man. He drove home on autopilot. Marina was in the living room organizing some of Olivia's clothes. When she saw his face, she knew instantly that the news wasn't good. She didn't need to ask. She just came closer and stood there, present, in silence. That night, Andrew couldn't bring himself to go into Olivia's room. He couldn't look at her knowing what he knew. He stood on the balcony looking at the illuminated city below, wondering what he had done so wrong to deserve this punishment. Losing Helen had been devastating, but losing Olivia, that would destroy him. It simply would. It was Marina who took care of Olivia that night. She gave her a bath, fed her, dinner, read her a story, and sang until she fell asleep. Afterward, she went out to the balcony where Andrew was and stood beside him. She said nothing. She just stood there. Sometimes, someone's presence is worth more than 1,000 words. The following days were about pure survival. Andrew would wake up, take care of Olivia, try to smile when she looked at him, but inside he was shattered. Marina realized she needed to be even stronger. She became the safe harbor of that house. She maintained the routine, maintained the hope, kept life happening even when everything seemed to be falling apart. One afternoon, while Marina was preparing lunch, Olivia came into the kitchen, shuffling in her slippers, still in her pajamas. She had just woken up from a long nap. She had that sleepy-faced look, but she smiled when she saw Marina. The little girl came closer and hugged Marina around the waist. Marina dropped what she was doing and knelt down to be at Olivia's level. She looked into those brown eyes and saw so much there. She saw innocence. She saw weariness. She saw a wisdom that no 6-year-old should possess. Olivia then said something that made Marina's heart stop. She said she loved Marina. She said Marina was like a mother to her. She said that when she grew up, she wanted to be just like her. Marina felt her eyes well up with tears. She hugged Olivia tightly, but gently, as if she were holding the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. Andrew, who was in the hallway and heard everything, leaned against the wall to keep from falling. This was real. Olivia loved Marina. She saw a mother figure in her, and he couldn't deny that Marina had filled that role. Not by choice, not by design, but out of genuine love, out of dedication, by being there when they needed her most. That night, after putting Olivia to sleep, Andrew and Marina talked again. He said he had seen how attached Olivia was to her. He said he understood. He said he was grateful. Marina simply replied that Olivia was a special child, that caring for her was the most important thing she had ever done in her life. October brought more challenges. Olivia had a severe crisis. She had to be hospitalized for a week. They were agonizing days, with Andrew and Marina taking turns by her bedside. The girl was fragile, but she still tried to smile when she saw one of them. She still asked when she could go home. She still had hope, that pure, childish hope that believes everything will be okay. When they were finally discharged, Andrew felt immense relief. But he knew it was temporary. The disease wasn't going away. It was still there, silent, relentless, chipping away pieces of Olivia's life one day at a time. Back home, the routine resumed, but everything felt heavier now. The medications were stronger. Olivia slept more. She had less energy. The good days were rare. Andrew felt powerless. Marina did her best to keep things light, but she also felt the weight of it all. It was on a November morning that something changed. Marina was tidying Olivia's room when she found a sketchbook the girl had hidden under her bed. Curious, she opened it. They were simple, childish drawings, but each one told a story. There were drawings of the family, with a woman Marina recognized as Helen, Olivia's mother who had passed away. There were drawings of Andrew, always tall and strong. And there were drawings of Marina, many drawings of Marina. In one of them, particularly beautiful despite its simplicity, Marina saw herself and Olivia holding hands. Both of them were smiling. In the background, a huge yellow sun and sunflowers. Lots of sunflowers. And at the top of the page, written in that crooked handwriting of a child still learning, was something that made Marina break down in tears right there, sitting on the bedroom floor. It read, "My heart's mommy." Marina held the sketchbook to her chest and cried. She cried for Olivia, for this child who deserved to have a whole life ahead of her. She cried for Andrew, who was losing everything all over again. She cried for herself, for having grown so attached to someone who could be gone at any moment. But she also cried with love, because she realized she loved that little girl as if she were her own, loved her with an intensity that hurt, loved her in a way she had never imagined possible. When she composed herself, Marina put the sketchbook back where she found it. She wouldn't tell Olivia she had seen it. That was hers, her secret world, her feelings drawn on paper. But that drawing stayed etched in Marina's mind. Those words, "my heart's mommy," echoed within her. And something began to form, an idea, a possibility, something that seemed impossible, but also seemed to be the only thing that made sense. Marina spent the next few days thinking, researching, reading everything she could about Olivia's disease, about alternative treatments, about transplants, about possibilities the doctors might not have considered. She wasn't a doctor, she had no medical training, but she had determination, and she had an old promise made to herself that she would not let another life fade away without a fight. November ran its course. Olivia was getting weaker. The hospital trips became more frequent. Andrew was on the verge of an emotional collapse. Marina held everything together, but inside, she was also falling apart. How could this be happening? How could a child so young, so full of life, be taken like this? It was on one of those difficult nights, after a particularly hard day at the hospital, that Andrew finally broke down. He was in the kitchen trying to make some tea, but his hands were shaking so much that he dropped the cup. The sound of the ceramic shattering on the floor was like a trigger. Andrew leaned against the sink and began to cry. He cried like he hadn't cried since the day he lost Helen. He cried out all the pain, all the fear, all the desperation he had been holding in to try to be strong for Olivia. Marina heard the crash and came running. She saw Andrew there, broken, destroyed. Without a second thought, she hugged him, and Andrew let himself be hugged. For the first time in years, he allowed someone to support him. They stood there, the two of them, in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by broken pieces of a cup, but united by a shared pain, by a shared love for the little girl who was in the next room, sleeping peacefully, unaware of how much she was loved. When Andrew calmed down, he looked at Marina and said something that had been stuck in his throat for weeks. He said he didn't know what he would do without her, that she had saved not only Olivia, but him too, that she had brought light into a house that was shrouded in darkness. Marina just squeezed his hand and said they were in this together, that she wouldn't give up, that there was still hope, there was always hope. And that night, while Chicago slept outside, inside that Lincoln Park apartment, 3 people were connected by invisible threads of love and determination. Andrew, Marina, and Olivia, a family that fate had formed in an unusual way, but which was real as any other. And together, they would face whatever came next. Because when you have true love, you can weather any storm. You don't give up. You fight until the end. December arrived, bringing the characteristic heat of a Chicago summer, and also a date that Andrew tried not to think about too much. Olivia's birthday. She would turn 7 on the 15th, 7 years old, an age that should be marked by noisy parties, by friends running around the house, by a cake with candles and games. But how could you celebrate when each day seemed like a victory against the inevitable? How could you throw a party when your heart was too heavy for any kind of celebration? Marina noticed Andrew's anguish. She saw how he looked at the calendar on the fridge, how he sighed whenever he saw a commercial for a children's party on television. One afternoon, as they prepared lunch together, something that had become a comforting habit, Marina brought up the subject. She said they needed to talk about Olivia's birthday. Andrew tried to deflect, saying he wasn't sure if a party was a good idea, that Olivia was so fragile that maybe it was better to let it pass unnoticed. But Marina was firm. She said it was precisely because Olivia was fragile that it was important to celebrate. Every day was precious. Every moment deserved to be lived to the fullest. And if Olivia wanted a party, then she would have a party. Andrew knew Marina was right. It was he who was letting fear take over. The fear that this might be his daughter's last birthday. The fear of creating memories that would later be too painful to remember. But Marina was right. Olivia deserved to have her wishes fulfilled. She deserved to be happy, even if only for a few hours. That night, when Andrew went into the room to say goodnight to Olivia, he found the girl awake, looking out the window. She was watching the Christmas lights that some neighbors had already started putting up. She loved this time of year, always had. Andrew sat on the edge of the bed and asked what she was thinking about. Olivia turned to him with those big eyes and said she was thinking about her birthday. She said she wanted to have a party. Nothing too big, just a few people she loved. She wanted chocolate cake, colorful balloons, and music. And she wanted Daddy and Marina to be there, happy, not with those sad faces they had been making. Andrew felt his chest tighten. How was this child so wise? How, even going through all of this, could she worry about the happiness of others? He promised he would throw her the best party he could. Olivia smiled, that smile that lit up the whole room, and said that was all she wanted. Just that. A simple party with the people she loved. The following days were filled with preparations. Marina took the lead in organizing. She bought simple but beautiful decorations, yellow balloons, which were Olivia's favorite color, colorful banners. She hired a neighbor to make the cake, 3 layers of chocolate with fudge filling. She prepared snacks, natural juices, sweets. Everything was thought out with care, every detail planned to make Olivia happy. Andrew invited a few close people, Dr. Beatrice, who had been so attentive throughout the treatment, Mrs. Carmen, an elderly neighbor who always asked about Olivia and sent over little cakes, Mr. Joaquin, the building's doorman, who had a special affection for the girl, and Isabella, a friend from when Olivia still attended school before the illness worsened. It would be a small, intimate party, but full of love. On the morning of the 15th, Andrew woke up with a mix of emotions. Joy at being able to celebrate another year of his daughter's life. Sadness knowing that time was running out. Hope that maybe, just maybe, a miracle could happen. Fear that this would indeed be her last birthday. It was too much to process. Olivia woke up excited. She had more energy than she had in recent days. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. She chose a yellow dress that Helen had bought for her years ago, which was now a little tight, but she insisted on wearing it. She said it was her lucky dress. Marina spent the whole morning finalizing the preparations. She decorated the living room with balloons, put up the banners, arranged the table with sweets and snacks. Everything looked perfect, simple, but perfect. When Olivia saw it, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. She said it was all beautiful, more beautiful than she had imagined. The guests began to arrive in the early afternoon. Dr. Beatrice brought a gift wrapped in colorful paper. Mrs. Carmen arrived with an extra homemade cake, because according to her you could never have too much cake at a birthday party. Mr. Joaquin brought flowers, a bouquet of sunflowers, because he had heard Marina mention that Olivia loved them, and Isabella arrived with her mother, bringing a puzzle as a gift. The party started with music. Andrew played the songs Olivia liked. The girl, though weak, tried to dance. Marina danced with her, holding her small hands, twirling slowly so as not to tire her out. It was such a beautiful and sad scene at the same time. Everyone there knew the gravity of the situation, but in that moment they chose to focus on joy, on the life. That was still pulsing. It was time for the cake. Everyone sang happy birthday. Olivia closed her eyes to make a wish. She stayed there for long seconds, concentrated, as if she were putting all her hope into that silent wish. When she opened her eyes, she blew out the candles with Marina's help. Everyone applauded. There were tears on several faces, but also smiles, because that moment, despite everything, was special. While they were cutting the cake and serving the guests, Olivia pulled Marina to a more private corner of the room. The girl looked up at this woman, who had become so important in her life, and asked a question that Marina never imagined would come. Olivia asked, with the pure sincerity of a child, if she was going to get better, if she was going to survive, if she would be able to grow up and be an adult like everyone else. Marina felt the ground disappear from under her feet. How do you answer a question like that? How do you look at that child and tell her the truth? But also, how do you lie? Marina knelt to be at Olivia's level and held her hands. She said that she was doing everything she could to make Olivia well. She said she wouldn't give up, never. Olivia just nodded and hugged Marina. It was a tight, desperate hug, as if the girl was clinging to the last hope she had. That moment changed something inside Marina. Olivia's question echoed in her mind for the rest of the afternoon. Even while serving guests, while talking, while trying to keep a smile on her face, those words were there. Am I going to survive? It was a simple question, but it carried an immense weight, and Marina realized she couldn't just stand by. She couldn't just watch. She had to do something, anything. The party continued until the late afternoon. Olivia got tired and went to rest on the sofa, but she was happy. She told everyone that it had been the best birthday of her life. Andrew watched everything with a heavy heart. That joy was so fragile, so temporary, but it was real, and for now, it was what they had. When everyone had gone and the house fell silent, Marina stayed to clean up. Andrew was putting Olivia to bed. The girl was exhausted, but wouldn't stop smiling. She told her father it had been perfect, that she loved him and Marina, that she wished that day would never end. After Olivia finally fell asleep, Andrew returned to the living room. Marina was still putting things away. He helped her in silence. When they finished, they sat there on the sofa, surrounded by the remnants of the party, deflated balloons on the floor, leftover cake on the table, the sweet smell in the air. Andrew thanked Marina for everything. He said that without her, none of this would have been possible, that she had given Olivia a day the girl would cherish forever. Marina just said she had done what anyone who loved Olivia would do, and that word, love, hung in the air between them, because that's what it was. Marina loved Olivia, truly loved her, as if she were her own daughter. That night, Marina couldn't sleep. Olivia's question kept hammering in her head. Am I going to survive? She needed to find an answer. She needed to find a solution. She got out of bed and went to the laptop in her room. She started researching. She researched Olivia's disease, experimental treatments, specialized clinics, transplants. That's how Marina discovered something that would change everything. She read about living donor liver transplants, procedures where a healthy person could donate part of their liver to save another. The liver was one of the few organs with the ability to regenerate. Both the donor and the recipient could lead normal lives afterward. Marina read this with her heart pounding. This was a possibility, a real chance. She kept reading. She discovered that the procedure was more common among family members, parents donating to children, siblings donating to siblings. But there were also rare cases of donations between unrelated people. There had to be compatibility, of course, but it was possible. Marina stayed up all night, reading everything she could on the subject. When the sun began to rise, she was certain. She was going to get tested for compatibility. If she was a match, she would donate. She would save Olivia, because that's what she promised herself years ago when she lost her sister. She would not let another life fade away if she could prevent it. In the following days, Marina acted discreetly. She didn't tell Andrew anything. She didn't want to create false hope. She contacted the hospital where Olivia was being treated. She explained the situation. They told her she would need to undergo a battery of tests: medical evaluation, psychological assessment, blood tests, imaging scans. It was a long and rigorous process. But Marina was determined. She began the tests in secret. She would leave the house saying she had personal matters to attend to. Andrew suspected nothing. He was so immersed in his own fears and worries that he didn't notice Marina's movements. It was 2 weeks of agonizing waiting. Marina continued her routine as normal. She took care of Olivia, the house, Andrew. But inside she was in a whirlwind. What if she was a match? What if she wasn't? What would she do? How would she go on? The result came on a January morning. Marina was home alone. Andrew had taken Olivia for another routine appointment. The phone rang. It was from the hospital. Marina answered with trembling hands. On the other end was the voice of the social worker who had coordinated the process. And then the words Marina never imagined she would hear. She was a match. Against all odds, she was compatible with Olivia. Marina hung up the phone and had to sit down. It was real. It was possible. She could save Olivia. She could give her a chance to live, to grow, to have a future. But then came the second piece of information. The social worker called back a few minutes later. She said there was a problem, an obstacle. US regulations did not permit organ donation between people with no recognized genetic or legal bond. Marina was not related to Olivia. She was not officially her mother. She had no legal guardianship. Therefore, legally, she could not donate. Marina felt her world crumble. What did she mean she couldn't? She was compatible. She was willing. Olivia needed it. What else mattered? But the social worker was clear. The rules existed for a reason: to prevent organ trafficking, coercion, irregular situations. Even if Marina's intention was genuine, the law was the law. When Andrew came home with Olivia, Marina was in the kitchen, preparing lunch. She tried to act normal, but Andrew noticed something was different. She was quieter than usual, more thoughtful, but he didn't want to press her. He thought Marina was just tired. Olivia went to her room to rest. Lately, she got tired very quickly. Andrew and Marina were in the kitchen. That's when Marina decided to tell him. She couldn't keep it to herself any longer. She needed to share the burden. She told him everything. About her research, about the tests, about the compatibility, about the possibility of donating part of her liver to Olivia, and about the rejection she received due to the lack of a legal bond. Andrew listened to everything in silence. When Marina finished, he didn't know what to feel. Gratitude that she was willing to do this. Fear of what might happen. Anger at the law that prevented it. It was everything at once. But what came out of his mouth was a plea, a desperate plea. He begged Marina not to do it. He said he couldn't lose her too. He had already lost Helen. He was losing Olivia. He wouldn't be able to bear losing anyone else. He said that any surgery had risks, that even though it was a relatively safe procedure, complications could happen. What if something went wrong? What if he lost them both? How would he live with that? He said he understood her intention, that he was grateful more than words could ever express, but he couldn't let her do it. He couldn't. Marina listened in silence. She understood Andrew's fear. She understood his anguish. But inside, something in her had already decided. That conversation with Olivia on her birthday, that question, am I going to survive? Marina had to make the answer yes. She had to try. But she wasn't going to argue with Andrew now. She let the subject die there, in that moment. She just nodded that she understood his position. The days passed. January dragged on with its suffocating heat. Olivia was getting worse. The crises became more frequent. Her abdomen was swollen. Her skin was jaundiced. The doctors said time was running out. A few weeks, maybe. Maybe less. Andrew was on the brink of collapse. Marina tried to be strong for everyone, but inside she was shattered. And then one afternoon something happened that changed everything. Marina was tidying Olivia's room. The girl was sleeping on the sofa in the living room because she didn't have the strength to go to her room. Marina was organizing the toys when she saw the sketchbook again. The same one she had seen months ago. Curious, she opened it. She flipped through the pages, and then she found a new drawing. It was recent, she could tell by the still fresh ink. It was a drawing of a party, with balloons, a cake, happy people. In the center, two figures holding hands, one tall, one small, Marina and Olivia. And next to them, a sunflower, huge, yellow, vibrant. At the top of the page, in that crooked, hesitant handwriting, it said, "Thank you for taking care of me. My heart's mommy." Marina held that sketchbook to her chest and let the tears fall freely. This was all she needed. This was the confirmation that she was making the right choice. Olivia saw her as a mother, and a mother does anything for her child. Anything. That night, Marina made a decision. She wasn't going to wait any longer. She wasn't going to let laws, rules, or protocols decide Olivia's fate. She would find a way, even if she had to go abroad, even if she had to break rules, even if it was against Andrew's wishes. She was going to save that little girl, because true love doesn't ask for permission. True love acts. She began her research again. This time she looked for clinics outside the United States, places where the laws were different, where donations between unrelated people were allowed. That's how she found a clinic in a South American country. She couldn't say where exactly, but it specialized in complex cases. It had a renowned team, and most importantly, it was willing to perform the procedure. Marina made contact. She explained the situation. She sent all the tests she had already done. The response came days later. They could do it. But it would be expensive. And it would need to be discreet. Marina didn't care about the details. She would sell everything she had if she had to. She would do whatever it took. What she didn't know was that the doctor in charge of that clinic had his own story. He had lost a daughter years ago, a girl who was on the transplant list for months. When a donor was finally found, it was too late. The girl didn't make it. Since then, that doctor had made a promise. He would help every case he could, even if he had to bend the rules, even if it was against protocol, because he knew the pain of losing a child, and he didn't want other families to go through that if he could help it. Marina began to organize everything in secret. She spoke with the clinic. They set a date. It would be in February. She would need to travel with Olivia. They would be hospitalized for a few weeks. The procedure would be done. And if everything went right, Olivia would have a chance, a real chance to live. The biggest problem was Andrew. How could she do this without him knowing? How could she travel with Olivia without raising suspicion? Marina thought and rethought. And then an opportunity arose. Andrew received an invitation to attend an architecture conference in Washington, D.C. It was important for his career. He was reluctant to go, not wanting to leave Olivia. But Marina convinced him. She said she would take care of everything, that Olivia would be fine, that he needed to keep living too. Reluctantly, Andrew agreed. It would only be a week, 5 days actually. It was all Marina needed. As soon as Andrew left, she put her plan into action. She packed their bags. She talked to Olivia. She told her they were going on a special trip, a trip that could change everything. Olivia, though weak, was excited. She loved the idea of traveling, of leaving the apartment that had become her prison. They took a flight. Marina had all the necessary documents. She had medical authorization. She had everything organized. They arrived at the clinic. It was a discreet but well-equipped place. The team was prepared. They welcomed them both with professionalism and kindness. They were admitted the same day. The preparations began. Final tests, conversations with the doctors, signing of consent forms. Marina was determined. Olivia was confident. She believed in Marina. She believed everything would be okay. The night before the surgery, Marina went into the room where Olivia was. The girl was awake, looking out the window. Marina approached and sat on the edge of the bed. Olivia turned to her and smiled. She said she wasn't scared, because she knew Marina would take care of her. She always did. Marina hugged Olivia and held back her tears. She said she loved her, more than anything in the world, and that she would do everything to make her. Well, everything. Olivia just nodded and said she loved Marina too, her heart's mommy. The next morning, the procedures began. Marina was taken to the operating room first. She received the anesthesia. As she drifted off to sleep, her last image was of Olivia's face, smiling, confident, full of hope. And Marina clung to that image. That was why she was doing all of this, for that smile, for that life that deserved to be lived. The surgery lasted for hours. They were endless hours where time seemed to stand still. In the waiting room there was only silence and the anxiety of a medical team that knew the weight of what they were doing. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Andrew attended lectures without being able to pay attention. Something inside him told him that something was different. He tried calling Marina several times during the day, but she didn't answer. He told himself she must be busy with Olivia, that everything was fine. But the unease remained. In the operating room, the doctors worked with millimeter precision. They removed part of Marina's liver, a delicate procedure that required expertise and care. Marina was in a medically induced coma, her body relaxed, trusting in the hands of those professionals. In the adjacent room, Olivia was also being prepared. Her small, fragile body, marked by months of illness, was about to receive a new chance. The procedure on Olivia went well. The doctors managed to transplant the piece of Marina's liver with technical success. They connected the blood vessels, checked the flow, and watched as the new organ began to function. It was a miracle of modern medicine, one life being saved by another. An act of love transformed into surgery. Marina was kept in an induced coma for longer. The doctors wanted to ensure her body had time to begin recovering without additional stress. She would be woken up gradually over the next few days. Olivia, in turn, was taken to the ICU. Her condition was critical but stable. Now it was a matter of waiting, to see if her body would accept the new organ, if everything would work out. Meanwhile, Andrew was in his last lecture of the day when he received a call. It was from an unknown number. He answered, expecting it to be spam, but on the other end was a serious professional voice. It was from the clinic. They said they needed to speak with him urgently, about Marina and Olivia. Andrew felt his blood run cold. What had happened? Where were they? Why was the clinic calling? He left everything behind. He caught the first flight back. Throughout the entire journey, his heart pounded erratically. He tried calling Marina, but her phone was off. He tried to understand what could have happened. 1,000 scenarios ran through his mind, none of them good. When he finally arrived at the airport and got the address the clinic had given him, he was shocked it wasn't in Chicago, not even in the United States. He was being directed to another country. What was happening? Why were Marina and Olivia there? Confused, distressed, he caught another flight. The hours dragged on. Every minute felt like an eternity. He arrived at the clinic in the middle of the night. He was met by the medical team. They took him to a room and explained everything. About Marina's compatibility, about her decision to donate, about the legal impossibility in the US, about the trip, about the surgery, about their current conditions. Andrew listened in a state of shock. He couldn't process it. Marina had done this. She had gone against his wishes. She had put her own life at risk. She took Olivia to another country without his knowledge. How could she? How did she dare to make such huge decisions on her own? Anger began to rise, an anger mixed with fear, with desperation, with a whirlwind of emotions he couldn't name. He demanded to see them both, immediately. He was first taken to the ICU where Olivia was. When he saw his daughter there, small, fragile, covered in tubes and monitors, but breathing, alive, his anger began to dissolve. He approached the bed. He held her tiny hand. It was warm. Olivia was alive. She was fighting. And she had a chance now. A real chance. Tears began to fall. Tears of anger, of fear, of gratitude, of love. All at once. All at the same time. He kissed Olivia's forehead and whispered that he was there. That Daddy was back. That everything was going to be okay. Then he was taken to see Marina. She was in another room, still unconscious. The induced coma would be reversed in the coming days, the doctors explained. The surgery had been successful. She was stable. Andrew entered the room and stood at the door for long minutes, looking at this woman who had entered their lives as an employee and had become so much more. He approached the bed. He looked at Marina. Her face was peaceful, serene, as if she were just sleeping. Andrew sat in the chair beside her. He held her hand. And finally, he allowed all the emotions to surface. He cried like he hadn't cried in years. He cried for Helen, who was gone. He cried for Olivia, whom he had almost lost. He cried for Marina, who had given a part of herself to save his daughter. He cried for the love that woman had shown, an unconditional, selfless, pure love. The anger vanished. What remained was gratitude, an immense, profound gratitude that took over every cell of his body. Marina had done the impossible. She had given Olivia what he could not give her, a chance to live. And she had done it, knowing the risks, knowing he was against it, knowing it might not work. But she did it anyway, because she loved Olivia, because that's what love did. It sacrificed, it gave, it saved. Andrew stayed there for hours, holding Marina's hand, talking to her even though he knew she couldn't hear him, thanking her, apologizing for having tried to stop her, promising that he would take care of them both, that he would never leave Marina alone again, that she was part of the family now, forever. The following days were an agonizing wait. Olivia was responding well to the transplant. The signs were positive. The new liver was functioning. Her body was accepting it. It was a miracle. A medical one, yes, but also something more. It was the miracle of love, of sacrifice, of courage. Marina was gradually woken up on the third day. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was Andrew, sitting by her bed, his eyes red from crying. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Andrew quickly got her some water. He helped her drink, and then with a choked voice he said a single word. "Thank you." Marina tried to smile. She asked about Olivia. Andrew said she was fine, that she was recovering, that the transplant had been a success. Marina closed her eyes in relief. Tears streamed down her face. It had worked. Olivia was going to live. That was all that mattered. In the following days, Marina began to recover. It was a painful, difficult process. The surgery had been major. Her body was adapting. But she never complained once. Every pain was worth it. Every difficult moment was nothing compared to the joy of knowing Olivia was alive. Andrew stayed there, at the clinic, taking care of them both. He moved between their rooms. He would stay with Olivia, talking to her when she was awake, holding her hand when she slept. Then he would go see Marina, bring her news of Olivia, sit by her side, talking about everything and nothing. It was during one of these conversations that Andrew finally opened his heart. He told Marina that she had saved not only Olivia, but him too, that without her he would have given up long ago, that she brought light, hope and love into a house that was dying. He said he was grateful, more than words could ever express. And he said something else, something that had been stuck in his throat for months but needed to be said. He told her he loved her, not in the same way he had loved Helen. That was another time, another life, but a different kind of love. A love built in the midst of pain, fear and struggle. A love that grew silently, without warning, without permission. A real, true, deep love. Marina listened in silence. Tears streamed down her face. When Andrew finished, she just squeezed his hand and said she loved him too. She loved him. She loved Olivia. She loved this family that fate had formed in such an unusual way. And she would do it all over, again, without hesitation, because that's what love did. It didn't think, it just acted. While Marina and Olivia were recovering, something unexpected happened. A clinic employee, moved by their story, ended up telling someone on the outside. And the story spread. Soon the local media found out. Reports began to appear. The story of a woman who donated part of her liver to a child with no blood relation, just for love. People were touched, moved. Social media caught fire. The story went viral. Newspapers from several countries began to cover it. The clinic tried to maintain Marina's and Olivia's privacy, but it was hard to contain. Everyone wanted to know more. They wanted to meet this incredible woman. They wanted to know how the child was doing. They wanted to understand how something so beautiful could be born amidst so much suffering. Marina refused all interviews. She said she hadn't done it for recognition. She didn't want fame. She didn't want to be treated as a hero. She had done what anyone who truly loved would do. She had given life, that's all. But people wouldn't let it go. They wanted to celebrate. They wanted to thank her. Support. Campaigns started. They raised money to help with medical costs. They sent flowers, cards, messages. It was a spontaneous movement of humanity, a recognition of something beautiful in a world that is often so cruel. Meanwhile, the authorities also became aware, and not all reactions were positive. Investigations began. The clinic was questioned. How had it performed a procedure that went against international standards? How had it allowed a donation without a recognized legal bond? There were ethical issues involved, legal issues, protocols that had allegedly been broken. The doctor in charge, Dr. Alejandro Martinez, was called to testify. He defended his decision. He said he had done what he thought was right, that laws existed to protect, yes, but that sometimes life demanded decisions that went beyond paper, that he had seen a child dying and a woman willing to save her, and that he would not let bureaucracy decide who lived and who died. His words had an impact. Doctors from all over the world began to speak out. Some supported him. They said he had done the right thing, that love should be a sufficient criterion for donation. Others criticized him. They said protocols existed for a reason, that you couldn't just ignore them, that the road to hell was paved with good intentions. Andrew was also called to testify. They had to return to the United States. The American authorities wanted to understand what had happened, how an American child had been taken to another country for an unauthorized procedure. Andrew explained everything. He said he didn't know, that Marina had acted alone, but he also defended her. He said she had saved his daughter, that he was grateful, that he would not let anyone punish her for an act of love. Marina also had to testify. It was difficult. She was still recovering, but she went. She answered all the questions. She explained her motivations. She was clear, direct, sincere. She said she would do it all again, that she had no regrets, that she would save Olivia 1,000 times if she had to. That love doesn't ask for permission. Love acts. The hearings went on for weeks. Meanwhile, Olivia continued to recover, and her recovery was astonishing. The doctors were impressed. Her body was accepting the new organ perfectly. The signs of the disease were regressing. She was gaining weight, color, life. It was like watching a flower reborn after a harsh winter. Marina was also recovering well. Her liver was regenerating as expected. In a few weeks it would be practically normal. The human body was incredible like that, capable of healing, adapting, moving on. When they were finally discharged, they returned to Chicago, to that apartment in Lincoln Park that had been the stage for so much pain, but was now about to become the stage for joy. The house was decorated to welcome Olivia. Yellow balloons, welcome banners, sunflowers everywhere. Marina had specifically requested the sunflowers. They were Olivia's favorite flower. They represented life, the sun, hope. When Olivia entered the house for the first time after everything, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. She was home, truly home, no longer hospitalized, no longer sick. She was alive, she was saved, and she was surrounded by the people she loved. The first few days were about adjusting. Olivia was still fragile. She needed care, but she was getting better every day. Marina cared for her with all tenderness. Andrew watched them both, and his heart filled with gratitude. This was family, true family, not defined by blood or by laws, but by love, by choice, by presence. Meanwhile, outside, the debate continued. The story of Marina and Olivia had touched so many people that social movements began to organize. They called for changes in transplant laws. They argued that significant emotional bonds should be considered, that love should be a criterion, not just genetics or legal papers. Experts began to meet. Ethics committees were formed. Serious and profound discussions about what defines family, what defines love, what should or should not be allowed. It was a necessary debate. Complex, with no easy answers, but necessary. 3 countries initiated pilot projects. They allowed donations between people with proven emotional bonds, even without kinship. It was a start. A small one, but a start. And it had all begun with Marina. With her courage, with her love for a girl who was not hers by blood, but was completely hers by heart. A month after they returned home, Olivia had a follow-up appointment. Andrew and Marina took her to the hospital. Dr. Beatrice was there. She examined Olivia carefully, ordered new tests. When the results came back, she smiled. For the first time in a long time, she genuinely smiled. She said that Olivia was in complete remission. The disease had regressed. The liver was functioning perfectly. She was cured. Truly cured. Andrew hugged Marina. They cried together. Olivia, seeing this, asked why they were crying if it was good news. Andrew and Marina laughed through their tears. They explained that they were tears of happiness, of relief, of gratitude for a miracle that had happened. That night, at home, the 3 of them stayed up late, talking, laughing, planning the future, a future that Olivia now had. School, friends, games, trips. Everything a child should have. Everything that was, almost taken from her, but was now possible. Marina looked at Olivia sleeping on the sofa, exhausted from so much laughter. She looked at Andrew beside her, and she realized she had found something she never imagined she would have. A family, a place where she belonged, a purpose. She had lost her sister years ago, and that pain would never completely go away. But now she had saved Olivia. She had given her what she couldn't give Eleanor. And that brought peace. A deep peace she hadn't felt in years. Andrew watched Marina looking at Olivia, and he realized that this was the picture of happiness. Simple, everyday, but real. He had lost Helen, and that pain would never go away either. But he had found Marina, and Marina had saved Olivia. She had saved him. She had brought life back to that house, and he was grateful. More grateful than any words could express. The house, which once held only pain and farewell, was now the home of a new beginning, a place where the impossible had become reality, where love had conquered laws, protocols, and death itself, where 3 people united by unexpected circumstances had formed a family, true, real, eternal. And that night, while Chicago slept outside, inside that Lincoln Park apartment, 3 hearts beat in the same rhythm, united, complete, at peace. A year had passed since the day they returned from the clinic. A year of transformations, of healing, of new beginnings. Life had returned to the Lincoln Park apartment, but not the same life as before. It was a new life, built on foundations of love, sacrifice, and courage. Olivia was unrecognizable. No longer that pale, fragile girl who spent her days in bed. Now she was a child full of life, energy, and dreams. Her hair had grown long, and Marina made sure to braid it differently every day. Her eyes sparkled with the light that only happy children have. And her smile, that smile that was almost lost forever, now lit up the entire house. She had returned to school. It was difficult at first. She had missed a lot of class time. She was behind her peers, but she was hard-working, determined, and she had full support at home. Andrew helped her with math, Marina with English. Together they made study time something fun, light, an opportunity to be together. Her classmates welcomed her with affection. They knew the story, at least part of it. They knew Olivia had been very sick and was now well. Some teachers had tears in their eyes when she first walked into the classroom. It was impossible not to be moved by that victory, by that life that had been saved. At home, a routine had been established. Andrew went back to working in architecture, but now in a different way. Lighter, less obsessed. He had learned that work was important, yes, but that there were more important things. Family, love, presence, he knew. Longer let a day go by without telling Olivia and Marina how much he loved them. He no longer left anything unsaid. because he had learned in the hardest way possible that life was short, unpredictable, precious. Marina continued to care for the house, but now she was no longer just the employee. She was part of the family, officially. Andrew had started the adoption process. He wanted Marina to have legal rights over Olivia. He wanted her to be recognized as a mother, because that's what she was. Not by paper, not by blood, but by love, for everything she had done, for everything she continued to do every day. The adoption process was complex. There was bureaucracy, hearings, evaluations. But Andrew was determined, and Marina, despite saying she didn't need papers to love Olivia, was emotional. It would be official. She would be recognized. She would have the right to be called a mother, not just in her heart, but also before the law. During this process, a lot happened. The investigations into the clinic and Dr. Martinez continued, but public pressure was immense, so many people defending what had been done, so much support coming from all over. Eventually the charges were dropped. They recognized that although procedurally irregular, the procedure had saved a life, and that had value, great value. Dr. Martinez received recognition from several medical institutions. His courage to do what was right, even against the rules, inspired many. He continued his work, now with more support, more resources, and he continued to help families going through what Marina and Olivia had gone through, because that's what he had promised his daughter who had passed away, that he would save as many lives as he could, and he was keeping his promise. Marina and Olivia developed an even deeper bond after everything. Olivia was fully aware of what Marina had done for her. Even being young, she understood. She understood that Marina had given a part of herself to save her, and that created a connection that words could not describe. It was something pure, intense, eternal. Every night before sleeping, Olivia would ask Marina to stay with her until she fell asleep. And Marina always stayed. She would sit on the edge of the bed, hold the girl's hand, and they would talk about the day, about school, about friends, about dreams. Olivia always said that when she grew up, she wanted to be a doctor. She wanted to help other children like her. She wanted to save lives. Marina would just smile and say that she would be amazing at whatever she chose to be, because she was special, always was. The months passed. Olivia's birthday came again, 8 years old, but this time it was a completely different celebration, no small, intimate party. This time, Andrew and Marina organized something big. They rented a hall. They invited all her school friends, the neighbors, the medical team that had cared for Olivia, even some of the people who had sent messages of support during her recovery. The hall was decorated all in yellow, Olivia's favorite color. There were balloons, banners, a huge table of sweets and snacks, and at the center of it all, sunflowers. Lots of sunflowers, large, vibrant, symbolizing life, joy, a new beginning. Olivia arrived at the hall and couldn't believe her eyes. It was all so beautiful, so special. She was wearing a new yellow dress, her hair held back with a floral headband. She was radiant. She looked like a princess who had defeated a dragon and was now celebrating her victory. The party was memorable. Music, dancing, laughter everywhere. Olivia played with her friends. She ran, jumped, danced until she was tired. She was the picture of happiness, and everyone there, seeing that girl full of life, was moved, because they knew what she had been through. They knew the miracle that had happened. It was time for the cake. Everyone sang Happy Birthday. Olivia, with Marina and Andrew by her side, closed her eyes to make a wish. She stayed there for long seconds. When she opened her eyes and blew out the candles, everyone applauded. Andrew asked her what she had wished for. Olivia smiled and said she had wished for that moment to last forever, for her family to always stay together, always happy, always united. Marina and Andrew looked at each other, tears in both their eyes. This was everything. This was the dream come true. A family, united not by blood, not by obligation, but by choice, by love, by everything they had been through together. After the cake, Andrew gave a speech. He thanked everyone for coming. He spoke about the journey they had lived, about the pain, the fear, the uncertainty, but also about the hope, the love, the courage. He spoke about Marina, about what she had done, about how she had saved not only Olivia, but the whole family. And then he did something no one expected. Andrew took out a small box he had hidden. He opened it. Inside were documents, Marina's adoption papers. They had just been approved. Marina was now officially Olivia's mother. She had all the rights, all the responsibilities. She was legally recognized. Andrew handed the papers to her. And there, in front of everyone, Marina burst into tears. She hugged Olivia. She hugged Andrew. It was official, it was real. She had a daughter. She had a family, but that wasn't all. Andrew had one more surprise. He took out another box, smaller. He opened it. Inside, a ring. A simple, delicate, but significant ring. And then, right there in front of everyone, Andrew knelt down. He asked Marina to marry him. He said she was already part of the family, that she was already Olivia's mother, and that he wanted her to be his wife. He wanted to make official what was already real in everyone's hearts. He wanted to build a future together, the three of them. Marina was in shock. She didn't expect that. She looked at Andrew. She looked at Olivia, who was jumping for joy. She looked at everyone there, smiling, waiting for her answer. And then, with a choked voice, she said yes. Yes to the marriage, yes to the family, yes to everything. The party turned into a double celebration. Olivia's birthday and Marina and Andrew's engagement. It was perfect. It was more than any of them could have imagined. It was life showing that even after so much pain, there was still room for joy, for love, for new beginnings. The following years were of pure happiness. Andrew and Marina got married in a simple but emotional ceremony. Olivia was the flower girl. She wore a yellow dress and carried sunflowers. She was radiant. It was the culmination of everything. The family that fate had formed was now official in every sense. Olivia continued to grow, strong, healthy, happy. The medical appointments were just for follow-up. The tests always came back clean. The transplant had been a complete success. Her body had accepted Marina's liver as if it had always been its own. It was a medical miracle, but also a miracle of love. At school, Olivia excelled. She was a good, dedicated student. But more than that, she was kind, always willing to help her classmates, always with a smile on her face. The teachers adored her. They said she had something special, an inner light that brightened wherever she went, and she really did. Olivia carried with her the gratitude of someone who had almost lost everything and was given a second chance, and that made her special. At home, she kept her sketchbook. She continued to draw. Her skills had improved, but the themes remained the same. Family, love, sunflowers. And in a special place in her room, framed on the wall, was that first drawing. The drawing that had changed everything. Marina and Olivia holding hands, the sunflower, and the words, "My heart's mommy." Olivia insisted that the drawing stay there. It was a reminder of where they had started, of the love that had saved everything. Marina planted sunflowers in the small backyard of their building. They bloomed every year, and every year when the yellow flowers opened, it was a celebration, a reminder that life always finds a way. It always blooms, even after the harshest winter. Andrew wrote a book telling their whole story. It took him months to finish. It was pages and pages about pain, about loss, but also about love, about courage, about sacrifice. He detailed the 7 critical days, from the moment Marina left with Olivia to the moment he arrived at the clinic. They were 7 days that changed everything. 7 days of anguish, of fear, but also of hope. The book was called 7 Days of Love. When it was published, it was an immediate success. It wasn't just a medical story. It was a human story, about what really matters in life, about how love is capable of moving mountains, of breaking barriers, of saving lives. People from all over the world read it. They cried, they were moved, and many were inspired to love more, to give more, to be more present. The book also had an impact beyond the emotional. Health institutions began to use it in debates about transplants, organ donation, and what should or should not be allowed. The case of Marina and Olivia became a reference, an example that sometimes the rules needed to be questioned, that love should have its place in medicine, that emotional bonds were as important as genetic ones. Several countries changed their laws. They allowed donations between people with proven emotional bonds. Evaluation committees were created to analyze each case individually. It wasn't an open door for irregularities, but rather a recognition that family was more than DNA. It was presence, it was love, it was choice. 5 years had passed since the transplant. Olivia was now 12. She was finishing middle school. She still said she wanted to be a doctor, but now she had clarity on what kind of doctor she wanted to be. She wanted to work with transplants. She wanted to help other families like hers. She wanted to save lives. Marina and Andrew supported her completely. They knew she would be amazing. Olivia had become a young activist. She participated in organ donation campaigns. She gave talks at schools about her experience. She told her story, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude for being alive. Gratitude for having Marina. Gratitude for having a family that loved her unconditionally. And her words touched people. They inspired. They showed that miracles happened. That love won. It always won. At home, the routine was peaceful. Andrew worked, but he was always present. Marina continued to care for the house, but now she had also gone back to school. She was taking a nursing course. She wanted to understand more about health, about care. She wanted to be even more useful. Andrew joked that the house was going to turn into a doctor's office. Marina would laugh and say that maybe it would, and that was okay. The evenings were special moments. The three of them had dinner together whenever possible. They talked about their day. They laughed. They made plans. It was simple, but it was everything. It was the family they had built, each with their past pains, but united in the present, looking to the future with hope. Marina still thought about Eleanor, her sister, who had passed away so young. The pain never completely went away, but it had transformed. Now, when she thought of her, she also thought of Olivia, and she realized that in a way she had honored her sister's memory. She had saved a life, she had made a difference, and that brought peace. Andrew still thought about Helen, his first wife. The love he felt for her was real, deep, and it always would be. But he had learned that the human heart is capable of loving more than once. In different ways, but equally true. Helen had been his past. Marina was his present and his future, and he was grateful for both, for everything each had brought to his life. Olivia grew up knowing her story. She knew she had two mothers, Helen, who brought her into the world but left early, and Marina, who saved her and stayed. Both were important, both were loved, and Olivia carried them both in her heart. It was a richness that few had, the love of two incredible women. One day, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, the family decided to have a picnic in a nearby park. They brought food, drinks, a checkered blanket to sit on the grass. Olivia brought a ball. She wanted to play. Andrew brought a book. Marina brought her camera. She loved to photograph their moments. They stayed there for hours. They played ball, ate, laughed. Olivia ran across the lawn, full of energy. Andrew chased her, playing tag. Marina photographed. Everything. Every smile, every hug, every moment, because she knew how precious it was, how much they had fought to get there. In the late afternoon, as the sun began to set, they sat on the blanket. They watched the orange sky, the clouds painted pink and purple. Olivia was between Marina and Andrew, holding both their hands, and there, in that simple moment, everything made sense. All the pain, all the fear, all the struggle. It had been worth it, because it had led them here, together, complete, happy. Olivia looked at Marina and said, "Thank you for everything, for saving her life, for staying, for being her mother." Marina hugged her and said that she was the one who should be thankful for being chosen, for being part of this family, for having the chance to love this incredible girl. Andrew watched them both, and his heart was full of love, of gratitude, of peace. He had a family, a real family. And it didn't matter how it started. It didn't matter the obstacles they had faced. What mattered was the present, and the present was beautiful. They went home after dark. Olivia was tired but happy. She took a bath and went straight to bed. Marina accompanied her as she did every night. She stayed there until she fell asleep. Olivia, before closing her eyes, whispered one more time, "I love you, Mommy." Marina kissed her forehead and replied, "I love you too, my love, more than anything in this world." Andrew waited for Marina in the living room. When she came out of Olivia's room, he hugged her. They stood there, embracing in silence. They didn't need words. The hug said it all. It spoke of the path they had walked, of the battles they had won, of the love they had built, of the family they were. The house in Lincoln Park, which was once a stage for so much suffering, was now the home of happiness, a place where the impossible had become possible, where love had conquered laws, protocols, even death itself, where three people with histories of loss and pain had found each other, and together they had created something beautiful, something real, something eternal. And every time they looked at the sunflowers in the backyard, they remembered. They remembered where they came from, what they had been through, but most of all they remembered where they were, together, alive, loving. And that was everything. It was more than enough. It was perfect. Life went on. Olivia grew up. Marina and Andrew grew old together. But the love remained, strong, constant, unshakable. Because true love doesn't wear out with time. It only gets stronger. It only deepens. It only becomes more precious. And if you were to ask any of them what the most important moment of their lives was, the answer would be the same. The moment they became a family. Not when papers were signed, not when ceremonies were held, but when they chose to stay, when they chose to love, when they chose to fight, together. Because in the end, that's what family is. It's a choice. It's presence. It's unconditional love. It's being there in good times and bad. It's holding a hand when all seems lost. It's believing when no one else does. It's giving of yourself so that another may live. It's sacrificing. It's loving. It's being. And Marina, Andrew, and Olivia were all of that. They were family. True, real, eternal. A family built amidst chaos. Molded by pain. Strengthened by love. And immortalized by the courage of a woman who one day decided she would not let a child go. That she would fight. That she would save. That she would love without limits, without borders, without fear. And that love saved more than one life. It saved 3. It saved a child who was given a second chance. It saved a man who had lost hope. And it saved a woman who found her purpose. Together, they proved that miracles happen. Not always in the way we expect, not always in the time we want, but they happen. When there is true love, when there is courage, when there is someone willing to say, even without words, I will not let you go. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Andrew, Marina, and Olivia has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of love, sacrifice, and courage, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what marked you the most in this story. Was it Marina's courage, the unconditional love, the fight of a family that did not surrender? Every day we bring intense stories like this, one which reveal the deepest and truest side of the human soul. Stories that remind us that love is capable of moving mountains, of breaking barriers, of saving lives. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with another narrative that will make you reflect on what truly matters in life. Until then, take care of those you love. And remember, family is what we build with our heart.